Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. In this week's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jim Martin, the CEO of Cocrystal Pharma, stock ticker COCP. Cocrystal Pharma is a clinical stage biotechnology company that develops novel therapeutics to meet the growing global need for effective and safe antiviral treatments. Jim, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Will, thank you for having me, and thank your investors for their interest in Cocrystal Pharma.
Awesome. So, do you mind telling me a bit more about yourself? I was looking through your career, and you were kind of a career controller and CFO. So what kind of led you to first the accounting and then to slowly become the co-CEO also?
Okay. So I've had a bit of a long career. I started off in software development industry, and while I was still at the university, and it was a private company, and I really got my grounding there. My specialty, as you said, is a controller, which is accounting, finance, and administration side of the company. And we had a profit-driven expense reduction type company where we were always looking for efficiencies, and efficiencies became one of my biggest pet peeves or areas that I felt I could really add to the company. I wasn't at the time, and still not the person actually doing the foundation of the company. There it was software developers. They made the software development. My job was to keep things running smooth and drive efficiency and in sales, from my side. From there, went into another private company, which was an aviation company called Avborne, and that was really interesting. It was, imagine a giant garage with big planes pulling into it, and there that introduced. It was much bigger with over 500 employees, but it was the same thing of driving efficiencies in the expense side, driving sales. But what we added there was inventory. So that was more interesting, and to really get my arms around dealing with large, complicated inventory systems. This is all the foundation for about 15 years ago when I went into biotech, because one of my principals I work with actually owned one of those planes. He's a billionaire, and I got to know him and went into the biotech side, helping him out with some of his companies. He had both a biological company like Cocrystal now, and he also had medical device companies, which was something I'm more familiar with, medical device, because you had your inventory. But this was the first time I worked with a company where we didn't have sales, and that's what I sort of is the crutch of biotech, is to develop, towards sales and drive towards that. And it's something that here at Cocrystal now, we don't have really much of an inventory. We do have the accounting and the administration and everything that goes with outside of actually, for myself, outside of actually developing the antivirals. But we are pushing towards, efficiencies in the expenses. I think we've done a pretty good job at that in here. And then also pushing towards getting product to market. I mean, we don't want to lose sight of what the goal here is, to get something to market. And that's really part of what I bring to the table, is to push that and get us there from a leadership role.
Yeah, with a big sales team or a company with like a complex set of inventory that they got to keep on hand, it seems, I guess, more straightforward how you would cut costs, how you become more efficient. How have you brought that kind of efficiency mindset to something like Cocrystal, since it is like I guess it seems to be inventory light, and it seems to be just pushing through the regulations, which you can't really cut much costs on.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, um, it brings me back to back to the aviation days where we actually set up a second company with contractors where we could bring in as needed. In when you don't need them, you don't have to use them, as opposed to employees that you have to keep on, for the full year. And the same here. We use a lot of third party contractors, which building those relationships are key. You have to be able to trust them like your brother, and drive whatever projects needed at the time, but yet not have to carry that burden of an overhead by using a third party. You're able to bring in when needed and to relax when not needed. So working with the CROs to develop these products, and then also negotiating contracts. There's a lot of you need to have a lot of inventory of chemicals and biologics, and all that has to be negotiated. And negotiating on the contracts, there is always a good amount of negotiation needed in this industry to get the best prices and exactly what you need. You don't need all the bells and whistles and extra many times. So I think those are the two strengths that we've been able to really capitalize to keep the efficiency strong at Cocrystal, which I do believe we do keep a very lean and mean operations here.
And then my last question before we get into exactly what Cocrystal Pharma does is getting into kind of biotech and the pharmaceutical side of things. Was there any sort of like culture shock when you first started working for Cocrystal, where you said, well, I'm used to doing things this way, and you go, wait, that doesn't work like that at all in the pharma industry? Is there anything that you kind of like felt like a fish out of water when you first started?
I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying these questions. It's kind of, maybe I'm regressing to the past here, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad. So one of the things that's kind of funny when you bring that question, I think of, is working with software developers. They're very much like scientists in a way, different, but there's a lot of similarities. I mean, they'll argue with me that they're not the same, but they do take very logical approaches. It's a very methodical solution to solve, either developing a software program or finding a great antiviral. So that was different. I wouldn't say it was a culture shock, but another thing that was really a pleasure. I grew up, in a very, I guess you could say, a very nice home, and going into aviation, it's a great industry, but the mechanics and everything. There's a lot of tough guys and cursing in some of our meetings. I mean, and it's okay. I mean, but you and this and all that, and I and I was like, wow. I mean, the way they operate, it works, but it's a very tough mentality, and they need to be. So don't get me wrong. I'm not a wimp or anything like that, but it wasn't as professional as I'd like to see. And coming in to biotech, it goes back to a very professional. You won't hear, very clean, very very thoughtful environment. So it was a little bit different there. I only say it because that was probably the biggest culture shock, to get back to something a little bit more peaceful and grounded, and people that think and before they speak more, and just less of that mechanic tough industry, which is, I'm not saying anything bad about. That's what you need in that industry. You got to be tough with some of the problems they deal with. Here, it's more, you got to be very, cerebral, and very, you have to really think through your path. So, and not having a profit. I think that was also, if you say culture shock, that would probably be it. Everything else was just different. And I'm just different perspectives, but not having a profit was mind blowing. I mean, it's like, the first thing I said, well, how do we get money? It's like, how do you pay for this stuff? And it's like, that took even a couple of years to kind of get my head around how this whole thing works, So that would probably be the biggest culture shock.
No, it's still tough for me to get my head around sometimes. I remember learning when I was like 16 that like half the publicly traded companies don't make money. And I go, well, what do they do all day then?
Yeah.
But no, obviously it's a lot more complex than that. And I can definitely.
You're
Go ahead.
driving towards something. That's why people say, "Wow, look how much money these things they're charging." And I feel that too, but these companies go through years without profit hoping to get one good, item out of all that work they did. And when they do, there's so much, you just can't say, "Well, this thing only costs you $500 to make." Well, it costs us millions of dollars to develop. So I get that you're actually hoping that you're going to get there so you can recoup some of that, and that's the business, and everyone's trying, and they all feel that they have a good product or a good cause they're going for, and they're hoping to get to that place where they can one day make a profit, just like us. That's what we're doing. We're driving to that profit one day.
No, and I love you talking about the different work cultures where, yeah, arguing and yelling in a mechanic shop actually might get something done, but like you're not gonna cuss out the FDA and get approved faster. And
No,
so,
yeah, no, and scientists they don't like to get cursed at and yelled at, and but that works in other industries, and yeah, so
so we've alluded to it a lot, but okay, in your own words, what does Cocrystal Pharma do? What's this problem that they solve, and kind of what are you currently working on?
so Cocrystal is an antiviral company, and so we go after viruses, and that's all we do. We're not a vaccine company. Vaccines in general are preventative. They teach your body how to fight the virus. That way, when the virus comes, your body can fight it. Therapeutics are more, and at least in my mind, what I would think you would do is go after the virus. Stop the virus, and that's what you cure, as as opposed to preventative. And this is speaking generally because some vaccines can have therapeutic effects, and some therapeutics can have vaccine type effects, but in general. So Cocrystal was founded after uh, some of the principals, the founders had sold Cialis and the company, to Eli Lilly, I believe it was, and they didn't really have anything to do. They had gotten a little bit of money. They were good friends with this gentleman named Dr. Roger Kornberg. He had just won a Nobel Prize. They'd been friends for years through Stanford. And they're like, well, and they have a good friend over here in Miami, Dr. Philip Frost, a billionaire. He's the guy I actually had the plane I told you about that brought me into the company. And they got together. Dr. Frost funded, and they started this company with the idea of developing a panviral antivirus therapeutic. So it's a dream. One pill a day cures everything. I
And
mean, the guy just won a Nobel Prize, so he shoots for the stars. So, but it's very difficult to do, and they knew it would be, and so they really started to focus in on different viruses, which I'll talk about in a second. But um, the main platform that was developed using what Dr. Kornberg had won his Nobel Prize in is this platform for developing these antivirals, which takes the viruses themselves and crystallizes them, much like a salt crystal is the best way to think of it. Very little salt crystal. You imagine a virus is crystallized like a salt. And they take these high intense X-ray beams that can only be found in certain locations throughout the U.S. A couple universities and some federal government entities have them. You just can't go out and buy one. These are $1 billion equipment, and you just rent time. So, and we shoot them through the crystals, and then what comes out the other side, like a projector, is near atomic level roadmap. I shouldn't say roadmap, but near atomic structure of the virus, which we use as a roadmap to bind to the replication area of these viruses. If you don't mind me getting more into it, so what we
keep going.
do is you take these near atomic level, I call them a roadmap, and we focus in on the replication area of these viruses. In general, I'm going to get to that. If you can stop the replication of the virus, you stop the virus. And what we do is we take these and we overlay them on top of each other with every strain of the virus. Because in influenza, there's various strains, and their viruses in general constantly mutate. And by focusing in on the replication area of every family member of a virus, you can find this one spot that doesn't change. No matter how it replicates, no matter how it tries to get around vaccines or whatever, it always needs this one spot. So that's I think one of the keys that we do is we find that area through this crystallization process, and then we bind to that area. And by binding to that area, you disrupt the replication process. It cannot replicate, and we make sure it can't replicate. And since this is a highly conserved area that's needed for all the virus families, we can stop every family member in that strain. Now, remember, the company started out wanting to stop every virus in the world, but at least we can stop every influenza virus is the goal here. And that's a little bit more achievable. So that is the foundation of the company, the strength of the company. We spent a good first, I'd say, 6-7 years just working on that platform. That's all we did. Not even really having anything, a product, just let's find a way to make a product. It's like try to build a machine that can make something. So that's what was that was a foundation. And to this day, I think that is one of the strengths of our company is our ability to industrialize the process of developing these antivirals. And we've developed some really good ones, which we've taken into clinical trials. And we've actually contracted out with other larger companies to help produce for them some of these antiviral drugs.
Is it sort of a blessing and a curse that it can go after every single version of the virus because it's harder to focus on what exactly to bring to market or which you want to get approved by the FDA, or is it a way to apply for 10 different use cases in the FDA since it can go after 10 different viruses day one?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And so when I say it goes after every family member, I'm speaking about, let's say, influenza. Influenza is general, so I can go after an influenza indication with the FDA.
Okay.
But with that influenza indication, we also have the H1N1 virus. These are all family members under influenza, more of a general high level indication. And then there's all these little different mutations that have have developed over years, making some of the current market therapeutics out there not as effective as they should be because they've already worked their, like Tamiflu doesn't work as good as it used to work when it first came out because there's all these mutations. So what we've done is develop a way to go after an area that no matter how it's mutated, it's required. And that's how we're developing our drug. But that particular influenza drug that we currently have in a phase 2 clinical trial, it only goes after influenza, doesn't treat anything else. Your question is interesting, though, if you don't mind me continuing here.
Go ahead.
Great. So because we do have a compound, a drug, CDI 988 is what it's called, and it's currently in a phase 1 clinical trial. That is interesting because it is for norovirus, but it's also for coronaviruses. That's 2 indications. Those are separate. Now, under coronavirus indication, we cover both COVID-19, Middle Eastern respiratory disease. I mean, there's a whole family under coronaviruses. We're not just a COVID-19 coronavirus. So that's okay. That the FDA is okay. You say it's after coronaviruses, 988. You can get that through. You can do it now. You go to a phase 2A on coronaviruses. But what you can't do is, and this is the problem you just brought up. What do you do when you have a compound like we have 988 that treats 2 different indications? Well, you have to go through 2 separate paths. Even though it's the same compound, you can. The only and you talk about efficiencies. The only real efficiency that we've gotten so far out of that is that we can do 1 phase 1 trial for both indications, because phase 1 trials are mostly for safety, checking for safety and dosing. So it's not like you're going after the indication, even though you get some data back. It's really just for safety. So you can get that phase one, even though it's two indications, and then they say, hey, it's a safe drug. Now you go into a phase two where you got to show some efficacy that this drug actually does what you want it to do. But so we are able to do one phase one drug, phase one trial, which we're currently right in as of right now over in Australia, for two different indications, which will need separate regulatory paths.
So this kind of gets into one of the questions I end up asking a lot of my guests on my podcast, especially someone like you who's a career executive. Where did you learn about biology and the FDA approval process? Did you go to some sort of night school? Were you just leaning on kind of your mentors and investors to help you through that? Or where did you start learning about that whole process? Because it seems like it's a whole nother world compared to like airplane mechanics and working with software people.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I love accounting, finance, and administration. What I do, that's my foundation. I love it. But every company I've been with, I love getting into the other side of it. I don't want to say I'm really good at accounting, finance, and administration. I've been doing it so long, it's just natural to me that it isn't as much of a challenge. There are challenging times and challenging things. So I really like what the company does. When I was in computer science side of things, I love that. When I was in the aviation, I was up in the planes talking to mechanics. I could tell you stories about all the things we used to do there. A lot of fun. And the same here. This was so intriguing to me. It's like, so you get your knowledge from a lot of studying, reading, being around the people, talking to them. It doesn't happen overnight. I didn't go to any school because I'm not a biologist. I didn't go to school for this. But you learn and you keep it and it's nice because in a way, it's like by not going to school, I don't have all the get down into the grinding details of things. I get to understand things at a higher level and have a different view on them. But I definitely get into learning about them. And so the bottom line is I asked a lot of like in Good Will Hunting, if you ever saw that movie, how he's like, you could have Harvard degree, you could have just gotten all this with a library card, sort of like that. It's like just you got to have the motivation, the excitement to be motivated to learn. And I find this stuff fascinating. In a way, I don't want to say another analogy between that and computer science is you're dealing with things you really can't see. In computer science, you're developing this, bits and bytes in this software, and the same with these viruses. They're there, but you can't touch them, feel them. Unlike the mechanical aviation industry, these are a mysterious little world that you need a microscope to really drive down to, and even then, you even need more powerful microscopes if you really want to get into the heart of some of these viruses and see what they're made of. So it's it's fascinating. So I think that's what drove me to learn is just the fascination of it all and just a lot of studying. Just reading a lot and being around the people, and talking, asking questions like you ask,
Well, yeah, I'll get back to Cocrystal in a second, but I would like to just ask a little bit more about that. I'm sure, like you said, you love your job. You're excited every day about it. But with your curiosity and loving different learning, jumping in, is there ever kind of a company that you would love to be like a controller of, like a railroad company or a company that owns a bunch of car dealerships? Or is there a random like business category that you'd be like, man, I would love to be able to kind of see both sides of that?
I don't really know. I haven't really thought about that, Will. I really like biotech because it's just such an interesting world. I am fascinated by just general science, in the quantum world of things, quantum science. Just the whole quantum world on physics, quantum physics, and the way that works. I am fascinated by that. And I guess to answer your question, if I could be around a bunch of quantum physics scientists working at CERN or something, that would be really cool. That would be really neat. I don't know if you ever looked at the quantum world, like quantum entanglements and things like that. It's a really weird, interesting place. And the way and it's also ties just to the whole universe. So I guess I would say that I would like to be work with quantum physicists would be pretty cool. But
Making
this
sure
is
that the
this is
super
pretty good
collider,
too. I mean,
yeah, making sure the super collider is more efficient and such. That'd be
yeah. I mean,
hanging
that
out in
thing would.
Switzerland sounds pretty sweet.
It is. I think it's really interesting. It's mind blowing to me. So
Yeah, 100%. I try to go down that rabbit hole, and it's too smart for me, so I stay away from that stuff. It's
check out
okay.
something
So
that really gets you. Will look at quantum entanglement. If
all
you
right, I
just
will.
read about quantum entanglement and what that does, and you'll be like, just how's that even possible? And all right, I won't. Let's not get stuck there, like you said.
Yeah, all right. So, okay, back to Cocrystal. So as you get approved for different use cases, first off, about for your main antiviral, and then the one that does more is it novovirus and such.
Mhm.
About like, do you have any idea how long it's going to take to get through kind of all the different trials? Is this something that you think is going to get done in the next 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, or what kind of range do you think?
So I think influenza is going to be 2 to 5 years. That one we're in a phase 2 trial. Could go quicker, could go longer. There's a lot of factors. There's always the regulatory process, the funding, if there's any partnerships involved. So um, then you have the 988. So just to summarize, we have influenza, which is CDI 42344 compound, and then we have the 988 compound, which is both for coronavirus and for norovirus. That's in a phase 1. So the phase 2, as I said, 3 to 5 years before commercialized. I would say 4 to 7, 4 to 1 currently in a phase 1. And there's two different indications for that. Everyone's familiar with coronavirus. I think we have a great coronavirus drug in 988. But also, and there's a need for therapeutics. In coronavirus, there was a lot of vaccine news, but there wasn't as much news about therapeutics. And then norovirus, which is a big deal, especially down here in Miami, where we have cruise ships, and in the military, anywhere you have people in close quarters. There's no therapeutic out there or vaccine out there. So there's
Oh
nothing. So
wow.
there's no competition on that one. So there's a lot of opportunities there with those two compounds that we are currently both in clinical trials. And yeah, as I said, we're really driving to get back to where I started in a profitable company. So we got to make some money here. So that's
So
that's that's why we pushed this.
with your push towards profitability, do you envision that you want kind of a quick win? So once it gets approved, you'd love to just sell it off to one of the big pharma companies and focus on other solutions and then other things that you can do? Is it something where you just want to team up with someone and help them manufacture? Or is this something where you all want to manufacture it yourselves and really own the whole entire stack, but have to then go down that road of figuring out how to make a clean factory and all that?
Um, that's a good question. So I see, and I've been with a few of these biotech companies. There's always a scientist side that love to create, develop, and they always have ideas for something new. And that's not no different here at CoCrystal. We have a whole bench of uh, things that we would like to develop that we actually have shown some promising results in that aren't currently in clinical trials. So we have plenty of things coming up that we could move forward with. Um, I think that what we would like to see is sort of a hybrid where we're bringing drugs to market, either partnering them or on our own, and also developing and keeping that run rate going. Once we develop something, to continue to develop some of these other drugs that look very promising that we have in our bench.
Yeah, with pharma companies like you all that I talk to, it seems like you all have multiple things, like you said, on the bench that you're kind of thinking about and such. And I always wonder if they're structured kind of in like a way you would structure like a venture capital portfolio, where it's some of them you need to have a 100x, 1000x return to pay for all the other ones. Other ones you get a couple of 3x returns pay for everything else, and then you can really double down on the experimental stuff? And where do you kind of like weigh out like the risk and reward of how much you want to like double down on one product compared to looking at a different product that might solve something completely different?
Yeah, it is sort of like that in the sense that you do have to look at what's there's the scientist side that want to cure disease, and the human side that wants to cure diseases. Unfortunately, there's the business side that says, how is there a business side to this? Will this actually make sense for investors, given the amount, the risk and return and the amount of capital to drive into it? So you do have to take those into consideration. We have partnered with bigger companies like Merck, who will support projects knowing there's no profit in it, just for the humanitarian effort. When you're a much bigger pharma, you can afford that. But when you're a smaller pharma like ourselves, you really have to pick where you're going to put your capital. So if we become a big pharma like we look forward to doing one day, we can do more philanthropic type activities. But really, at this level, we're really focused on what's going to give us a return on the investment into this, so that we can get our investors in a place that they would like to be too, since they've been so dedicated in funding a company like Cocrystal, in hopes that one day we will have that great product, that influenza vaccine, therapeutic that can rival vaccines and find a cure for noroviruses. That would be great.
Oh, awesome. So as we wrap up, Jim, people want to hear a little bit more about Cocrystal, what you all do, the different problems you solve, a little bit more about the stock. Where should I send them?
www.cocrystalpharma.com is our website, and you have I think plenty of information there. There's also a contact us sheet that you can reach out to us, and if you want to have any questions answered, we get questions to our website and we respond to it. I think that would be a good place to start.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. For
Thanks,
those
Will.
still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement, therefore, by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented in this